Looking closer to the thing, we see a few documentaries that are natural evolution of the linear one, and some of them successfully. If you see like project like Welcome to Pine Point, that's a very successful project, and it's very rooted on a linear history and lineage. Bear 71 also have the a very specific time frame, so that has something that relates to the linear ones. But some of them aren't, so I would say that we need to believe that they aren't. Though that detachment, sometimes I think it's not very good to see, because sometimes I see people making documentaries without respecting or looking behind and see how much good work has been made on linear and how much we can learn from linear to incorporate on interactive one.
That's hard to say. I think interactive documentary draws on the lessons learned from documentary storytelling and film, but I think it might be a disservice to call it a documentary in the tradition of film, because we're always going to be comparing it to cinematic narrative, and I think it's something very different, and the experience is very different. If we expect to get the same emotional impact that we get from cinematic narrative from interactive documentary, I think in a way we're selling an interactive documentary short. It'll never measure up because it's fundamentally different, and it can do a lot of things that film can't do in terms of the amount of information you can put in an interactive documentary, the level of interaction and engagement. I mean, huge archives can be captured in an interactive documentary, and that sort of volume you would never find in a traditional linear narrative. So I'm not saying it's better or worse, and while it certainly draws on that earlier tradition, it's different, and I think that's something that we have to just take it on its own terms.
I actually see it as an evolution. I certainly see it as an evolution. I see documentary as being about storytelling about our shared world. That kind of refers to Bill Nichols' definition. And in that storytelling, one of the primary things that's been going on in social documentary is the harnessing and the choreographing of multiple voices, and in a sense the experience of the audience has been to watch, consider and weigh those multiple perspectives as they are arranged in a documentary. So in a way I feel like what's going on now is an evolution within those kind of terms. But a very significant evolution, and an evolution which I think rewrites documentary to an extent. It seems to me that documentary in the 20th century was very much positioned in relation to ideas about kind of the auteur tradition of thinking about the creation of meaning, you know, the idea of a kind of single author shaping a piece. And actually, I think the affordances of digital, what's happening right now, these possibilities, and that people are taking advantage of to create something more dialogic, more collaborative, more open. I think these, in a way, take us back kind of beyond that auteur thinking of documentary to perhaps to something earlier.
It's both. It's a natural thing because it's a natural evolution because the material, the document is at the very center of the project. So a documentary for the cinema, for the television, on the web has always a first goal, which is telling a story, a strong story.
The relationship between technology and the stories we tell and how we tell them, who we tell them to, how we're able to assemble the story, those are, the technology is a really important part of the discussion. It's not the only part of the discussion. And so these are really interrelated elements of what we're able to do and what's in our toolbox. What I think I'm really interested, I've always been very interested in documentary as a wonderful tool for social engagement and for the engagement in our contemporary life. And so technology is part of our contemporary life, so it has to be part of the documentary evolution. So I don't know if it's a different genre or if it's a different format, but it's the evolving language of documentary.
I don't know about natural evolution. I think it's an opportunity. So in usability design, and there's the idea of an affordance. So the affordance in on a door is what lets you know how to use it physically. That there's, the doorknob is shaped a certain way and it kind of tells your hand that it fits your hand and your body can. So I think interactivity and digital media is an affordance to the documentary field. I think it's natural in that, given the approach of documentarians and the kind of inquiry and the kind of approach to storytelling they have, the possibilities that digital media affords is a natural fit. And in some ways a much more natural fit than dramatic storytelling, than fictional storytelling, than a lot of other ways in which digital media has a lot of interest. I think it's because so in order to do transmedia storytelling in a fiction world, you have to build a world around it. It's not just the walls around one media property, but you might want opportunities to explore backstory. You might want to take characters or take elements of a story in other ways and build this sort of world around it. In documentary, that world exists. That world is around us already. We want to have a reaction from the audience, and maybe that it's an activist documentary. It might be you want people to take action. Interactivity allows that. You might want people to be able to have a conversation and spark that conversation. You might want people to see more about the before and after points. We've done some interactive documentaries where the linear doc was in the can, is filmed, and the subject, 2 years later, has a very different take on their life, very different take on what they talked about. In an interactive documentary, an evolving documentary, we can add that in. We can go and get that and put it back in. So there's a lot of things that we can make use of because there's a documentary approach and a documentary story to tell that naturally lends itself. So it's an evolution in that I think the possibilities are just such a good match to what we want to do.
It is an evolution. It's clearly an evolution, and this evolution is really thrilling for me. It's exciting because it's going with technology, and whatever will come out new will transform the way we are telling stories. And so in this way you can say yes, it is an evolution, and it goes with new technology skills and application and softwares and new kinds of mobile devices. They will influence the way we are telling story. So yes, I think it's a step-by-step way we're going forward, with new storylines and new stories.
I don't know if interactive documentary or interactive textualities are an evolution, a linear evolution of traditional sequences, textualities or narratives. In one sense, yes, because we have new technologies, digital technologies, so it's easier to create these kind of hypertextual environments where you can click. If you remember, you know very well that the theory of hypertext was born in the 80s, more or less when the graphic interfaces arrived to the desktop, to the computers of all the people in the world. So people start playing, creating hypertext with a HyperCard, the famous application for Macintosh. So we can say, in that sense, from a technological point of view, we can see that as an evolution, a new moment in the history of documentary. But if we analyze the evolution of narratives, before that we have network structures in literature and in other fields. For example, the encyclopedia, the famous French encyclopedia in 18th century, was a hypertext. And people could navigate from one article to the other one, or from one volume to the other one. And we have a lot of experiments in literature, like novels like Julio Cortázar and many other poems, where they play with this navigation, this interactive structure where you could navigate. So in that sense, maybe it's not a new thing. The idea of having a network structure of text is not a new thing. The new thing is more the technological one. So I don't know if we can talk about natural evolution. Obviously it's not natural. We are talking about technologies. We are talking about culture, so natural I don't think is the right concept.
I think it's the current wave. I think there have been 3 waves of disruption. So the first one was hypertext in relation to text. The second one was the web in relation to what I'll call legacy media practices and industries. And interactive documentary is the same sort of wave of disruptive technologies rolling through documentary. So for me, I can take lots of things written about interactive documentary, and I can search and replace interactive documentary and put in hypertext. And if I change the date of the publication to 1997, there's no difference. So it's an evolution, though I don't like that term because evolution seems to suggest a bit more direction perhaps than there is. It's a bit sort of chaotic. But I think it's just this disruptive set of technologies, digitalisation, which is now a given, but this notion of the network rolling through lots of different media practices. So it's enabling and constraining at the same time, but I think a useful way to think about it at the moment is mainly as a disruptive technology.